Hello everybody. Welcome back to Adobe Live. My name is Francisco, aka Paco. Got a lower third for y'all. Boom, there it is. And welcome to Photo Talk. So this is a new photography show on Adobe Live. It's gonna be fun stuff. We're gonna talk all things photography. We can talk about camera updates, trends, Lightroom updates, cool tips and tricks. Want to highlight the communities. We'll have a community spotlight session where we look at each other's photography profiles and kind of hype them up. And then maybe down the line, we'll do some photo submissions. I don't know. The cool thing about this is the world's our oyster. It's new. It's experimental. It's fun. The main point is it's all things photography. So thank you for joining us. I see some friends in the chat. We got Cody. We got Robert. We got other friends coming in. So yeah, if you have any questions, have any concerns, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I am looking again at YouTube and Behance. So yeah, let me know where y'all are tuning in from, what you'd like to see in a photography show. Like I said, this is all new stuff. So let's hang out together. Let's talk shop. Let's get nerdy with all things photography related. It should be a good time. So what do we got going on? I do want to say this, like Adobe Live fashion, got inspired from Jess. Even Ryan, I think, had a cat cam back in the day. I do have my own pet cam. It's called the Ansel cam. He is sleeping. He looks a little bit pouty just because I haven't taken him outside yet. And his mom is gone for the day. So yeah, hopefully Ansel kind of brings up his fluffy head from that chair. But he's kind of napping right now and just hoping that some exciting stuff comes later on the day. But yeah, let's get into it. So I'll go ahead and hop over to my screen, which I guess I should plug that in. There we go. So just a little bit about me. I've done landscape photography for over 10 years. As any of you might know me, I'm kind of a broken record when it comes to landscape photography and living in the mountains. I used to live in Yosemite, where I spent a good portion of my early 20s, and that's kind of where I found love with photography and landscape. So I've been shooting it for many, many years. So here's my profile if y'all want to check it out. It's Paco Siller on Instagram. And if you like pretty pictures of mountains and sunsets, then check it out, right? So I also kind of do like a hybrid of video stuff. As y'all may also know, I've done video production professionally for a while. I'd say photography has been kind of a professional hobby. Videography is what I do professionally, but there's a blend in both of them. And I think the lines get blurred with what social content creation is these days, right? Like video's bigger than ever now with Reels and TikToks. And then photography also still has a place when it comes to product photography, landscape. So it's kind of good just to have a healthy blur of both of those and kind of do both of them. I think you can learn a lot. And then also kind of experiment with like photography, poster design, which is fun stuff. So yeah, check it out. Okay, cool. I see Ashra Full on us. What's up? Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I see Karina. What's up, Karina? Karina is a good friend over on the other side of the pond in EMEA. She does a lot of work for us in Adobe Live, and we actually finally got to meet in off Barcelona. So it's great seeing you in the chat, Karina. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we got about an hour. We're going to do an hour of photography, and then let me go ahead and just bring this full screen. So new show. Yay, new year, new show, new category. So I'm trying to bring in some love into the photography world, into Adobe Live. We used to do it. Kind of went silent. Now it's back. So I love photography. I said, hey, let's do a show about photography on Adobe Live. So it's called Photo Talk. I was thinking about, we do photo walks. Why don't we call it Photo Talk? Yay, fun stuff. So here's kind of our agenda. We'll do a little bit of camera talk. We'll talk about some Lightroom updates. As you all may know who use the Adobe Creative Cloud, these apps are always changing. They're always shifting. Can be hard to keep up with the latest updates and how they can change your workflows in a good way, because we do make things faster, easier, so you can spend more time creating instead of doing tedious tasks. So yeah, we'll talk about Lightroom updates, what the latest is with the latest update, which I believe was in December with most of Lightroom apps. We'll do a little bit of community spotlight, and if there's some time, we'll edit some photos on the trail. So I hiked the JMT last summer. I qualified for my sabbatical. The good people of Adobe give you a month-long sabbatical after putting X amount of years in the company. And I spent my time hiking in the mountains for 21 days, over 245 miles. Fun stuff. So if there's time, we'll kind of edit some of those photos, and maybe y'all can kind of help me pick what my next selects are. All right, so let's get into it. I see some new friends coming in. What's up, Ryan? Thank you for joining us. See Oliver. Good stuff. I'm excited. Thank you all for joining us. Okay, so we got the question of the day. It's actually a question that I get quite a bit with photography. It's mainly, hey, what camera should I buy? And that's a great question, but it's also a loaded question. Yeah, so what camera should I buy? I always say, if you're pretty new to photography and you're kind of just diving in for the very first time, I would say start with what's in your pocket. And the reason for that is that smartphones are getting better and better each year. Their camera quality is pretty dang good in today's standards compared to what they used to be 10 years ago, right? You can do a lot with photography on your smartphone based on which one you have, right? There's some smartphones that come with 3 cameras. There's some that come with 1, but regardless, they're all shooting pretty high quality pictures. And I think it's just really important to start shooting photography just to kind of see which type of photography you start leaning into more. You might see yourself that you're shooting landscape photography. You might see yourself shooting more portrait style photography. You might see yourself just shooting more lifestyle photography. These slides look clean. Thank you, Ryan. I made it all with Adobe Express. I was trying to think of how to make a presentation, and I was looking at Keynote, and I was like, wait a second, you can make some pretty sweet decks with Express. So shout out to Adobe Express. It actually is really easy. I just literally learned how to do this the other day. First slide on Express, pretty easy. So yeah, back to the content at hand. Yeah, so just kind of start shooting with what's in your pocket. I think it's a great way to not commit too much money on something that you may or may not want to do. And I think once you start shooting more and more, you'll kind of see which type of photography you see yourself doing, and then you can start to make better educated decisions on what type of gear you want to invest. Because let's be honest, photography is not cheap. We have the cameras, which cost quite a bit of money, and then you have the lenses. The lenses can cost as much as your camera body, if not more. So it adds up, and if you do it professionally, then obviously you can do tax write-offs. That's your business. Great. If you do it as a hobby, it can be an expensive hobby. So I would just say, just kind of start shooting with what's in your phone and then seeing if you like it. And if you do, then you can kind of dive into it more based on what category of photography you're shooting. Okay. So let's say you're not a brand new person into photography and you do want a little something more. I would say check the secondhand market. Okay. So again, I think when it comes to camera recommendations, it's very, very budget related. Like you'll see these questions pop up on forums like, Reddit or like Facebook or other types of socials, like what camera should I get? Well, first of all, I would say know what your budget is, right? Because again, this stuff is not cheap. It can add up. So I would say establish what your budget is, and then you can start kind of looking at different tiers of cameras. Because believe it or not, there are so many different types of cameras to choose. You have micro four thirds sensors, right? So I am actually, the video that I have right now is a Panasonic GH5, which is great for video. Also, people use it for photo, and it's got a micro four thirds sensor. So without getting too deep into it, maybe we can save it for another episode. Sensor size is a big thing in cameras. Obviously, the bigger the sensor, the bigger quality is going to be. I do think there's a thing such as sensor overkill where people chase the biggest sensor in a camera and they get a camera that costs a couple grand and it's got like a 50 megapixel sensor and they're just shooting photos that are ending up online. Well, you don't need that much quality. It's kind of overkill. If you were shooting professional photography that was printing up to giant billboards, then you can make the argument that you do need that big of a sensor. But, anyways, going back to the subject at hand, cameras come with different sensors. Usually the smaller the sensor, the more affordable it is. So you have micro four thirds sensors, you have APS-C sensors, you have full frame sensors. The higher you go, the bigger it gets. But you can usually get a good camera within the tier you're looking at if you buy secondhand. So let's say you only had $500 and you're looking at a crop sensor, APS-C. Chances are those $500 can go a long way if you buy in the used market instead of buying something brand new. So you have a little bit more features, a little bit more stuff to work with. I see Sankar. What's up, Sankar? Thank you for joining us. Thank you all for joining us. This is fun stuff. Again, we are doing Photo Talk, brand new photography show on Adobe Live where we talk and nerd out all things photography. and we'll edit some stuff. We'll look at updates, and then we'll spotlight the community. So yeah, fun stuff coming. Okay, cool. Another thing to think about, it all comes down to personal preference and your budget. So we did talk about budget. Let's talk about personal preference. Here are some big names that I listed. We got Fujifilm, Canon, Sony, Panasonic, Nikon. If your brand isn't on there, don't take it personally. These are just kind of the names that, just popped into my head first. Honestly, some people have brand loyalty, right? Personally, I picked up my first camera as a Canon, and then I bought a bunch of camera gear that was Canon. So I'm kind of invested in the Canon ecosystem. And what that means is I buy lenses that are Canon. And, lenses, I would say they're a little more evergreen than camera bodies. You can stick an old lens on a new camera body. There's mirrorless cameras. Those are the big things now. But if you have a camera lens that was for DSLRs, which are the digital mirror single lens reflexes, you can still use those lenses. You just need to buy an adapter. And chances are if it comes from that manufacturer, that lens, you're not going to see a difference on performance from an old body to a new body. I would argue sometimes it even seems like it's better. It's crazy. So, it's all personal preference. If you pick any of these camera brands, there is no wrong answer, right? These are all reputable and amazing camera brands that make amazing stuff. And, they all kind of have their personal niches. Fujifilm, I would say they're kind of bringing back that old school style film look, which not bringing back. I would argue that's kind of what they're known for. But the XT line, they're portable mirrorless cameras that out of the camera has presets so it looks like a film camera. And, they're social ready. So you can just take that camera, transfer it, or take that picture from your camera, transfer it to your phone on Wi-Fi, upload it to social. You don't need to edit it. I have seen this trend where people just take digital cameras and make it look like old cameras. They give it that film style look, and Fujifilm, I would argue, excels with that. So if that's the look you're going after and you kind of want an easy, like plug and play camera that you get a great film style look, photo out of the box, try Fujifilm. Canon, they make amazing video cameras too. So I also shoot video, which is why I wanted to stick with Canon. So they have great hybrid cameras. They have cinema cameras that I can use my photography lenses with. Sony, I think when they came out with the A7 cameras, they were insane with low light. The A7S II, they kind of have cameras that are optimized for photo and video. But with Sony, their low light performance, I would say, is unmatched. You can get a ton of great low light performance with their full frame mirrorless cameras compared to some of the other players in the game, right? Nikon, I know people that love Nikon. They're great at photography. I wouldn't know if I wouldn't say they're mainly known for video. Canon, I think, has got that hybrid. Nikon, I think they're more predominantly photography. Panasonic has been making big leaps in the video and photo world. They got great cameras. I know a couple people on my team that have the SLH cameras. So yeah, anyways, I could nerd out about this all day, but long story short of it is you can't go wrong with a reputable camera. Yeah, Ryan, the low light with AI, the AI with low light stuff is kind of crazy. I agree. And that's another thing. It's that what used to be a camera limitation kind of becomes irrelevant on the app that you're using. So Lightroom has some like AI denoising feature that we can talk about maybe a little later. But, if you had a noisy picture and you shot raw, then you put it into Lightroom and its AI just gets rid of the noise. And now you could say like, well, low light performance is kind of irrelevant with cameras now. So it's all kind of just always shifting. We got Robert saying Canon PowerShot SX70HS is a great camera. Yes, that camera actually gets recommended a lot for a first time camera. And it's portable, it's friendly. People can say like, well, what's the difference between a smartphone and a starter camera? And again, it's the sensor, right? The cameras that you get on smartphones, the sensors you get in smartphones, at the end of the day, they're never going to be as big as a proper like full frame crop sensor or even something from a PowerShot. So, you can have AI blow it up, but there is a look, I would say, that comes with a higher quality sensor that smartphones just aren't there yet. Who knows? We'll see. Okay, let's talk about what's new in Lightroom. So we have quick actions. So this is only for Lightroom mobile. So as you all may know, Lightroom has different versions. So there's Lightroom mobile that you can access on a smartphone. You can also access it on desktop, and now you can access it on a web, which is cool. And then you have Lightroom Classic, which is desktop only. But this is specifically for Lightroom mobile. So I kind of try and put the apps here to let you know what this is for. So the quick action tool In Lightroom on mobile, streamlines the editing process by offering quick AI-powered suggestions for specific parts of a photo. All right, and then I go into a little bit on how to get into that. So let's do a little bit of a cool demo on what that looks like. So this is early access, so keep that in mind. Oh, check it out. Looks like Ansel flipped positions. You can kind of see the little bit of his his fluffy head. So hopefully we get a little Ansel cameo, but he's very much he's in chill mode. Very much in chill mode. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like on a smartphone. We'll do a hot switch here. We're changing sources, as we say in the live stream production world. Okay, let me fire up Lightroom. And we got our smartphone cam. All right. Okay, so let's have a look at quick actions. So actually, I think I have a night shift off. So let me turn that off. There we go. Cool. Okay, let's have a look at this landscape photo. All right, so here it is. I shot this with my Canon R6 Mark II. It's a raw image. If you look kind of here in the bottom left, you have this little wand tool, right? So that little wand tool is how you start quick actions. So there it was clicked. Now I've clicked it again. It's going to analyze it, right? So I went ahead and looked at this photo, analyzed it, and say, hey, what are the things here? One of the things it notices is the sky. So we'll go ahead and hit auto just to kind of give it some contrast, vibrance, and before and after. Again, when you shoot raw, the image is kind of flat, so you do want to introduce some color adjustments, right? So I just did that really quick with auto, and then when I click on sky, it's going to go ahead and detect that sky, right? And now it's giving me different options. This is all the quick options, or sorry, the quick actions, right? So let's look at blue drama. Let's look at that drama. Look at that sky, right? I can zoom in here. So it went ahead and just kind of looks like what is a dehaze filter on this, and it just introduced a lot of drama to that sky. Dramatic photos get eyeballs, so this isn't a bad way to kind of get this photo in, right? And you can change the amount, right? So we can go super intense. This obviously is way too saturated, right? Personally, when I edit photos, I try and make it look from what I remember in my mind, and that may be a little bit more contrasty and saturated than what I remember. But you don't want to go over the top because then it just looks unrealistic. So that's too much for me. Dark drama, I would argue, is a little too much, but you can always be subtle with these things, right? So you can kind of start with an extreme and dial it down, and look at this. We have quite a bit of drama in that sky. Again, before and after. We're seeing some drama. Okay, there's a blue pop. There's a blue hour. There's a golden hour, which looks like it's kind of warming up the sky. There's neon topics if you want to go a more creative approach. So yeah, tons of things to do there. So let's have a look at how quick action works with a little bit more subject. So people. All right, so here's another photo. This is my partner, Jamie, and of course, Ansel, which you will probably see a lot of content of because I am obsessed with these two. Okay, so let's go ahead and, this is flat camera. Let's do auto. All right, there we go. We gave it some contrast. We gave it some saturation. Thank you, quick actions. You are making our lives pretty damn easy here. Okay, now if we go to subject, it's going to go ahead and analyze the subject. And now we have different presets on how we can kind of make these subjects pop, as we like to say in the design world. So speaking of pop, look at that. There's pop. So what that did is it kind of looks like it increased the shadow. So again, a little bit before, a little bit after, more emphasis on the subjects there, right? There's a warm pop, which looks like it's making those color tones a little bit warmer. There's light. There's balance, contrast, soft. Again, cool, soft. I don't like that. Vibrant. A little too saturated, but there you go. It's a great starting spot where it kind of segments the aspects of your photos, and then you can kind of go from there. So that's for subject. There's the background too, right? You can actually give it a blur. So let's see, if we give it a geometric blur, it's going to activate that lens blur. So I've noticed this, artificial blurring, I think works great if you don't have a camera that can do that. Usually comes with a little bit of higher end cameras. You don't want to overdo it, right? Because it can look unrealistic. So to me, that, knowing photography, this just stands out. It was artificially altered because the subjects are very cut out, I like to put it. But, you can't go subtle. So, with photography, I always like to say less is more. Don't go with extremes. Just do all these little adjustments, and you'll see that all those little adjustments kind of add up to make a pretty nice photo. So I like that. So before and after, it blurred the background a little more. It makes these subjects pop out. So very cool stuff. Good quick actions to kind of deal with. You know, Karina is saying that's a nice feature to highlight subjects. I agree. It's very easy. Before, you would have to brush it and maybe take it into Photoshop, but it's all being done with the tap of a button. So good stuff. Thank you. Quick actions. Okay, cool. Let's continue moving on. Switch back to my laptop here. One sec. All right. All right, let's go back to our awesome deck. There we go. Cool. Generative remove. So I think we all know this has been out for a little bit. It was a beta feature for a little bit last year, but now it's pretty much available across all the Lightroom apps. And it is honestly next level. Generative remove, I use it personally a lot. It's, you know, there was different distraction removals in Lightroom, but they kind of just took aspects of the current photo. It wasn't generating new things based on it. So it's pretty nuts. So it's obviously powered by Adobe Firefly. It allows you to easily remove distractions of unwanted objects in a photo. So let's have a look at how that looks in real time just to give you an example. I know what's happening here. I don't have my hard drive plugged in, which is why Lightroom did not see that catalog. So let's give it a second to load up. We'll try this one more time. Yay. Yeah, don't forget to plug in your external hard drives, folks. Okay, so here's a catalog that I kind of prepped for with a bunch of my photos last year. Let's see, if I scroll up to the top, I should have kind of that photo that we were looking at. If not, we'll just pick a new one. But again, there's obviously a theme with my photography here that you'll see, which is a lot of landscape and mountain photography. So let's see, where is that photo? Here we go. Let's look at this one. Okay, so I think this is the one that I already had generative remove with, but I will show you what I mean. Okay, so here's a camera that I took kind of camping out in the Sierra Nevada, right? We got Stacy in the chat. What's up, Stacy? Good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. Okay, so let's have a look at this. So, you know, cool shot with some cars, some mountains, right? I think I was just kind of doing a lifestyle shot here. But we have this very distracting Ansel backpack. So that is, we take Ansel backpacking with us. Ansel is our furry friend. And that is his little backpack. And it is pretty distracting, you can argue. You know, you have landscape cars and just a giant red bag. So if we go to generative remove, we can click on this button over here, right? And then I'll make sure that use generative AI is clicked. And then we're just going to highlight around this backpack. Now, there are some kind of best practices when doing this. You want to make sure that you're not really just filling it in like right at the backpack. You do want to get some edges around it just to kind of give generative AI a better idea of how to blend the things around it. And then we'll hit remove. So there it is, working its AI magic. Let's see. Yeah, Robert's saying generative remove can be a party trick at any place. Yeah, especially on a phone because it's mobile. So again, this is available on Lightroom Mobile, on Lightroom on web, so you don't need to be sitting on a laptop here. You can actually do it on a phone, which is crazy. Okay, one sec. Turn down the music a little bit. Let's go to 19. Cool. Okay, cool. So let's go back to this. Look at this, folks. Kind of crazy, you know, without knowing that there was generative AI there. It just blends in so great. And it gives you different options, right? And that's why I said kind of get the things surrounding it, because it even added some rocks that blend in really well with this environment. You know, and, you know, I would argue all three of these options, it's going to be so hard to know that there was something being done here. So yeah, again, that's what I love to do, generative AI stuff too, just to kind of enhance a photo. I don't like to use it too much to manipulate an entire photo, but, you know, kind of just remove those distractions. You know, that camera that bag could have easily been moved before I took that shot, you know? So if it's something that I could have just easily gone out of the way, that's like materialistic, let's get it out of there. Let's use generative remove to get it out of there. Okay. All right, cool. Let's keep on checking out what other updates we got. Stacy's here for the Ansel content. I hear ya. I take a lot of Ansel photos, so that whether you all like it or not, you're going to get some Ansel content. Okay, customize blur effects. So this has been around for Lightroom for a little bit, but you just have a little bit more granular adjustments that you can make with this feature. And then we also did add this one on the right, which is kind of this anamorphic style blur effect. So pretty cool stuff. So the new Let's Blur tool in Lightroom adds aesthetic blur to any part of your photo. You can easily apply optical blur and bokeh effects through an interactive, customizable experience. And then you have different types of bokeh or AK blur in the photography world. When you throw out the background with some blurring action, we like to call that bokeh. And then these are just kind of the different types of blur we have, because based on the different camera or the different lens, they do introduce different types of blurs. Anamorphic is something that you see quite a bit in when you're shooting video. It's, once you know what it looks like, it is this kind of like circular anamorphic blur that's, I feel like it's kind of making a comeback right now in like some big Hollywood productions. But yeah, just different types of blurring effects, right? So let's have a look at what that looks like. We'll go back to Lightroom. All right. And then let's see, which photo was I looking at? So much content, y'all. Tons of photography. Let's see. Yes, this section is a lot. Okay, let's take a subject here. Why don't we look at this one? All right, so here we'll do one that I haven't messed with. Okay, so here's Jamie and my twin brother. Believe it or not, that is not me. We get mixed up all the time. People look at this photo and they're like, oh, Paco and Jamie, but no, twist. That's my twin brother next to Jamie, so people automatically see it's me, which I get. All right, taking a sip of water. So Karina, still waiting for my Fuji XM5. Can't wait to give it. Karina, how long have you been waiting for that? I personally know a couple people who have ordered some Fuji cameras, and one, they just haven't been in stock, so they're still waiting. But two, they pre-ordered it, so I'm just curious to know like how long it takes, because I'm telling you, the Fuji cameras are trending. Everybody wants to get their hand on them. Generative move. Yep. Okay. Cool. So let's have a look at this photo. Again, it's shot flat. Colors are pretty flat, but let's do some quick enhancements. Or I could just click this auto button right here. Auto, perfect. A little too contrasty for me, so I'm gonna kind of bring up the shadows on the subjects, obviously because they are the focal point of this. That increased the exposure a little bit. I think that was a little too low for me. And then one of the things I like to do is just kind of do a radial gradient. So again, it's, when you do photography, think about painting with light. That's what I like to do. You're just kind of painting in and darkening, dodging and burning, as we like to say, parts of the photo so we can add emphasis on what our subject is. So I'm going to decrease the exposure a little bit, kind of on that background, again, to just add emphasis to my subjects. I like to duplicate and invert that mask, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of brightness to these two lovely folks right here. All right, we'll add a little bit more of a shadow, maybe increase the exposure a little bit. There we go. We're making them pop. I know you either love or hate saying that term, but what else can we say with that? Okay. Okay, cool. So we made that happen. Now let's have a look at the blurring effect. So if we scroll all the way down right here to the right, looks like my camera is blocking that. Let me move myself. Okay, so if I hit apply, it's going to analyze and throw up some blurring effects. So you're saying you should have just shared a bunch of pictures of both of you and everyone would have thought you were a master compositor. Yes, we've definitely had our fun being twins and playing trickery. Okay, cool. So as you can see, it threw out the background. So now we have even more emphasis on our subjects, which is kind of the goal here. You can't visualize the depth here, right? So here, obviously you're putting more emphasis on the background. So if I got rid of that now, the background is the focal point for whatever reason, but that's obviously not the goal here. And then, kind of just getting granular here. Again, if we're trying to get this effect, we want to sell it. So I would need to refine this right here just because the backpack is thrown out a little bit. And that is not the goal. So I could just brush this out right here. So I'm just kind of letting this tool know like, hey, camera is still part of our subject, right? And there we go. So it's got it more in frame, and this is now a blurred out photo, and it looks pretty solid. And again, you could go very granular here. Let's see. Again, I would probably, less is more in my world, so I'd probably turn down the blurring a little bit. To me, that looks more realistic. Again, different types of blur. You can really see the difference when you really boost that up. But, again, anamorphic, that's kind of trending, so maybe we'll do that. Cool. Yeah, so there's the blur tool, all right? Okay, let's keep on moseying on. Keep on keeping on, as we like to say. Okay, now community spotlight. Cool. So we got through the Lightroom updates, and now one of the things that I really want to do with this show is kind of spotlight fellow photographers that tune in. So obviously this is the first show, so I went ahead and picked the first one. But I thought something cool that we could all do is, once I pick somebody, then I'll have a submission form, I think in the description. So if one of the mods can kind of go into the description and just post it on the chat, then we can get that going. But that's just a form submission to say like, hey, I shoot photography. I'd like to be spotlighted. And yes, submit it. We'll look at them. And then for the next episode, we'll spotlight somebody else. So I think it's kind of a way to, kind of hype each other up, elevate us, kind of get more eyeballs on the type of work that we do. So that's kind of the goal with this whole thing is again, we're a live stream, we're a community team. Let's be the community together and kind of amp up our photography cohorts around here. So the person I want to shout out is Alex. It's on Instagram. He goes by A Noble Vision. And I really like his kind of like 3-word liner here. He's based out of Santa Barbara, and all of his photography is Santa Barbara romanticized. And I think that's really cool. So obviously a lot of his content deals around that. And he does some really cool style with his content that I think stands out. So, Instagram used to be very photo heavy. Obviously reels are a big thing now. And, as photographers, it could be challenging to kind of grow your page on Instagram when there's so much emphasis on video. But I think he does a great job in kind of standing out and doing some cool things with photography. So why don't we have a look at his profile? Let's see, we do follow each other. So we'll do A Noble Vision. There we go. Alex Noble. Thanks, Cody, for doing that. Let's see. Okay, so again, his whole thing is Santa Barbara romanticized. So he also stays with some pretty cool trending topics. So evolution of a moonrise. Obviously, we had a full moon. I believe it was yesterday. So very timely. And, these are some very, very awesome compositions of a moonrise. So it's kind of these like visual storybooks of a certain theme that I really like. I think carouseling, scrolling content is definitely a trending thing right now. I'd argue a lot of people are kind of leaning on this carousel type of content, right? And then again, it's, there's definitely a theme here with Santa Barbara. It's by the coast. It's this place kind of in Southern California. So yeah, just beautiful, beautiful photography that I'm a big fan of. And again, this kind of gives me Wes Anderson vibes, just kind of with the text and kind of the look. And I think it's so cool. So Santa Barbara on film volume 6. Obviously, he's got different volumes, but, just different highlights, romanticized versions of Santa Barbara all around the place. I think some people think, oh, I only live in this place. Like, I need to go to epic places to shoot photography. Obviously the picturesque places in the world are going to get eyeballs, but, I guarantee you there's something to shoot in your backyard. That's something that I'm personally guilty of. I'm like, oh, if there isn't an epic sunset, I'm not going to shoot it. It's like, no, if you really kind of try and look at things a different way and really kind of hone in on maybe one theme that you're trying to shoot, then you can really make some great photography, a storybook, or a themed content around that. And obviously he does a great job around that. So, this is pretty cool. It says keep out, and it looks like the entry head of some sort of trail in the Santa Barbara mountains, right? He's just kind of taking all these parts around Santa Barbara and highlighting them. So very cool stuff. I do want to show one of the things that he does that I actually took inspo from one of my posts is, he kind of has these like photo video frames. So they look like photography, but they're like moving still frames, which I really like. So this is from the Santa Barbara Harbor. And I think, kind of framing this, giving it a white overlay, really kind of sells like this idea of a like moving picture, right? So camera stationary, I'm assuming you shot in 4K because this is very high quality. Instagram destroys quality when you upload, but if you shoot in 4K, it compresses it down. It's just going to look crisper. So, it's kind of like these moving still frames. This could easily pass as a single photograph, but, it's with the added twist that there's video behind it. So I think it's something really cool. Right. And there's some people here, it looks like this is probably around the holidays. So people are getting very merry. Right. So, super beautiful shots. Obviously he's got an eye for, composition. This is really cool too. I really like this shot. Right. A classic golden hour silhouette. Very, very cool. The flag's moving, obviously it's kind of hard to see what's moving here, but you have the flags moving. So again, very, very cool stuff. So I can go on and on and on about this. So very cool. So yeah, so the mods posted that the submission form on our chat. So if you all are watching, if you want to request yourselves to be spotlit, or if you know somebody that could use a little bit more love, or want to get some eyeballs on it, that's what this whole segment's about. So go ahead and just do the submission form, put in the info that you feel comfortable sharing. And yeah, next time we're live on air, which this airs every other week. So it's not going to be next week, but the week after, we'll pick somebody else from the community and then hype them up. Okay? Very, very cool stuff. All right, let's go back to our deck. And I'll have a look at the chat here and kind of take a breather. Let's see. So golden hour Maxon. I agree. There's a lot of golden hour Maxon. So y'all ever saying, I used to be like that. Then I started exploring the local area and realized there's a lot there. Yeah. And I think that's kind of on brand with this whole idea is, you don't have to travel to these epic spots to shoot photography. I mean, obviously, if you go to a picture-worthy spot, like it's a picture-worthy spot, but, I would argue try and make a habit of finding content around your area and really amping it up, like romanticize the area that you're around and just share with people. I guarantee you your creative eye or your creative outlook on how you see this area that you obviously know because you live there and somebody may not know that follows you, they're going to like to see all the cool little nooks and crannies of the area that you're in. All right, let's keep on keeping on. Right, so there is the spotlight submission. I think the mods kind of already posted that. I see Cody Bear posting that. Thank you again, Cody, for, oops, looks like my power's kind of causing a little bit of static, so I'm disconnecting it. Yeah, I see Cody already kind of posted this, so thank you for doing that. Okay, cool. So that is kind of our presentation deck side of things. Now, let's look at some photos from the trail. So we got about, what does it look? Maybe 20 minutes left. Okay. So for the last 20 minutes, I want you all to help me pick the selects of my next post for the JMT, or I don't know, just call out which photos you think really stand out. So to give a little bit of context on what this is all about and what you see tons and tons of photos about here. Let me filter this down so that it's a little less distracting, but hold on one second. Let me turn. I'm just going to turn off the music in my ear because it's getting a little loud for me. There we go. Okay. Cool beans. So the John Muir Trail, we can look it up. I'll give some visual cues here. So the John Muir Trail, I would say, is probably one of the crown jewels of the Sierra Nevada. The Sierra Nevada is kind of the mountain range that extends down California. It includes Yosemite, Mammoth, Mount Whitney, all the way up top. And it is a big part of California. So there's two big through hikes that go through the Sierra Nevada. You have the Pacific Crest Trail, which is also known as the PCT. That one's crazy. Honestly, doing this hike, I've always thought about maybe doing the Pacific Crest Trail. But after doing a shorter version of that, I was like, I don't know if I can do it. The Pacific Trail pretty much goes from Mexico all the way to Canada. And it does go through the JMT. So if we kind of make this a little bit bigger, there we go. So you start in Mexico, practically on the border of the United States and California, and then you hike. It's pretty much for 6 months. Like you have a tight time frame because you hike around early spring because you're in the desert, right? You're not going to hike the desert over the summer because you're going to run out of water. And there's a whole different thing about like where your water sources are, where your water caches are. It's nuts. But the PCT, you hike for 6 months. You got to start early, so you're hiking during the desert when it's cold and you're not dying of dehydration. But it goes all through California. It goes through Oregon, and it goes all the way to Canada. All right, so if you all know the movie Wild, I think Reese Witherspoon was in it. It was originally a book, and it was about this lady who hiked the PCT. I haven't seen the movie, but I've heard of the book. But it's all about her hiking the PCT and her experience on it, because it honestly can be life-changing. It's nuts. So anyways, all that being said, 2 types of through hikes in the Sierra Nevada that are very popular and really hard depending on how much of an adventure you want to do. One's the PCT, which is this one, and then the other one is the JMT. So the JMT pretty much takes the part of California where you hike through the mountains of California, and you go practically from Mount Whitney, which is right here. So Mount Whitney is the tallest contiguous mountain in the United States. What does contiguous means? It means not including Alaska or another piece of land that's not part of like the continental United States. Stacy Spear says she saw Wild. I know, I need to see it. I'm like such a California mountain person, and I need to see that movie. You've convinced me now, Stacy. So thank you. But yeah, so the JMT is pretty much just takes Mount Whitney, which you go up the highest mountain in the United States, and then you have to go back down, and then you hike all the way to Yosemite. And as you all may know, Yosemite is one of the national parks in this country, which I have a big bias for because I used to live and work there, which I think is another crown jewel of California. So you hike from Mount Whitney all the way to Yosemite. And the JMT, I'd say, takes on average people anywhere from like 18 to 21 days. You're on the trail for 21 days. So you do need to send yourself resupplies because you're going to run out of food. So you got to plan accordingly where, if I'm starting kind of here in Mount Whitney, then at Independence was my first resupply point. So I got off trail, paid for a service to pick me up at the trailhead, bring me down to a hotel where I mailed myself some food, got my packages, slept on a bed, which was so nice for that. And then went all the way back to the trailhead start. So gained another elevation and then kept on. Okay. So I did that over the summer for about 21 days. And it's probably one of the trips that I've shot the most amount of photography from. So that's what these are. I mean, I just have hundreds and hundreds of photographs. And I know people that do photography professionally, they're like, that's a cakewalk. You do a shoot, you're talking about thousands of photographs. And it's a lot. I mean, it's one thing to actually shoot things in the photography world, but then it's another thing to actually review all those photos. Culling is what we call it, just removing all the ones, picking your selects. The reality of photo editing is you're just looking and deleting photos that aren't going to make your selects, and then, fine tuning your selects. So let me show you just kind of a quick glimpse of like what the JMT looks like with some selects picked out. So with Lightroom Classic, I like to, there's many ways. There's no right or wrong way to kind of cull through your photos. There's systems where you can rate them by stars. You can color code them. You can add them to your quick collection. There's just so many options. But I like to color code them. And then my selects, I just highlight green. And I like to do that because if I go to attribute, so right here, I'm in Lightroom, I'm the all photograph view. And this just has, I have years and years of photography. I just decided to bring in the catalog of 2024 with my R6 Mark II, right? And, it's got a number. So we're at 800 photos. There's over 1,000 photos. There's just so many. So come up with a system that, you can kind of organize photos, selects and all that. Mine is just color coding. So I decided to make it green. So I know my selects are green. If I just kind of go over here and pick the green one, then here are kind of my selects that I just kind of have throughout the year, right? But we were talking about the JMT, so let's go to the JMT. It's short for the John Muir Trail. So here's kind of like a quick visual journey of what it looks like. So you do enter wilderness. So John Muir Wilderness is what you start off. You go through Ansel Adams Wilderness. You end up in like 4 different national parks. It's beautiful. I loved it so much. So here it is. So most people do the John Muir Trail starting in Yosemite and end in Mount Whitney. Why do people end in Mount Whitney? Well, because a lot of people that come to the mountain range don't live at elevation, which means they're not living in 6,000 feet. They're living at sea level. And when you try and summit a mountain range that goes up to 14,000 feet on your second day, you're probably going to get elevation sickness. So that's why a lot of people get the permits called southbound. So you start in Yosemite and you end in Mount Whitney. So that way you're acclimated over 2 or 3 weeks in the John Muir Trail, where by the time you get to Mount Whitney, which is the highest point that you'll reach, elevation sickness is going to be a cakewalk, right? But for me, I couldn't get a permit for that. Permits, believe it or not, are very, very competitive, and it's hard to get a permit because people from all over the world want to do this trail. So the permit that I could score was going northbound, which means that I'm starting from Mount Whitney and ending in Yosemite. And that means that I am summiting Mount Whitney on the second day. That was okay because I live in a mountain town. So I was already kind of acclimated. I actually thought there was other peaks that were harder for me. But Mount Whitney, the elevation thing, I was already acclimated. So I felt comfortable doing it. But, some people spend a couple days doing day trips, acclimating, and then they tackle it on, which you should do. So here we are entering the Mount Whitney zone, right? So it's beautiful. This is the Sierra Nevada. The Sierra Nevada, I think, has a very distinct peaks. You have the Canadian Rockies, you have, Mont Blanc in Europe, and they have very dramatic mountains. The Sierra is just kind of known for this jaggedy style granite rock that's just kind of, rugged, right? Let's see. I want to make sure I'm not missing any questions. How did you manage battery life while hiking for so long? Great question, Ryan. I could spend a whole episode talking about gear and how I prepped for this. People did look at me with a giant Canon strapped to me and they're like, what are you doing, dude? Because a lot of people do hike, they hike like ultralight status. So, my camera gear adds like 5 pounds and, that's a lot of dead weight for people, but I love photography, so it's worth it for me. Batteries, I had a really good idea of how long a battery lasts me while I'm on the trail. So I brought 3 batteries. That's it for 21 days. And I knew if I would just take out my camera, I would shoot my shots and I would turn the camera off. If I was doing video where it's on and it takes more processing power because it's recording, it's like writing to the memory card, it's encoding the video, no way 3 batteries could ever last. But I knew photography was pretty much like you take out your camera, you take your shots, I put it out. So I actually ended up going through 2 full batteries over 21 days. I didn't recharge any of them. The 3rd battery, I think I was done at 50%. So I had a little bit of padding, but that's how I did it. I did also bring a battery pack. So like something to charge my phone. So obviously when you're backpacking for this long, and I did do it solo. I was supposed to do it with my partner, but she couldn't do it at the end of the day. So I ended up going solo. But when you're hiking, you want to be self-sustaining. So obviously have a paper map if you can. I had my maps on my phone, and you are relying on an electronic device to hopefully not die. But between that and the battery pack, I felt pretty safe about just relying on offload maps. So that was another gear thing. It's another question. What is your favorite Lightroom tool? Honestly, I would say the gradients. we're going to edit a photo here. I know I'm ranting on about the John Muir Trail. We'll do at least one photo. But I will show you how much I think masking really, really makes a photo stand out. Let's see, looking at the other chat, taking spares. I carry the batteries on a normal day. Yeah, Oliver, I usually almost always bring a spare battery. I've definitely taken out my camera out once thinking the battery was full, and then I turned it on and it didn't turn on because the battery was dead. So just always make a habit. Always bring at least one spare anytime you bring a camera with you. Okay. Okay. So just kind of looking at the JMT, here I am at the top of Mount Whitney. So that's 1,400 feet. Right, so you can kind of see the change in atmosphere, their colors, just because you're just so high. So yeah, that's the little tent I used. This was called a non-freestanding tent. So and again, in an attempt to save weight, I got a tent where your tent poles are your hiking poles. So you want to hike with some hiking poles just to save your knees. And it's got a bunch of other uses, but my hiking poles were what stood this tent up. And I was able to save some gear by not having to bring a tent that requires hiking poles, because that could be another pound or 2. And it sounds nuts, but everything adds up when you're hiking. I know people that cut their toothbrush in half to save grams, and sounds crazy, but when you really weren't trying to cut weight, it does matter. Okay, so we have a little under 10 minutes left, so I do want to actually get to editing a photo. So again, tons of photos. I could go on ages about my experience on the JMT, but let's look at the photos that I have to do. So, if you follow my Instagram, I've been kind of doing some posts. So this was my first post, kind of outlining the first leg of the trail. So Ray Lakes, I thought was one of it was a highlight for the trail. It's just absolutely beautiful. You get to different parts of the lake that just look like Mars. This is a different type of stone. So yeah, just definitely trying to show like all the different variety that comes in the JMT, because it's just, again, personal opinion, I think it's one of the crown jewels of California. Yeah, so that was like kind of one post. You know, here's another post just in different parts of the trail. Again, summiting a bunch of things. This water is probably the cleanest water you'll see in your life. I mean, this is untouched, right? Like I would argue way back in the day, this was probably a water source for many of the rivers that went downhill, right? Because there's nothing in there to contaminate it. You know, you're pretty high up there, so there's not many critters that are, you know, contaminating the water, and it's flowing downstream. This is like 100% snow melt, and you could see it by like how blue the water is. So I really wanted to highlight that. Yeah, it's beautiful. Temples, hiking poles, the idea, not cutting your toothbrush. That is crazy. I know. It's through hiking is a whole thing. It's, you know, people like go crazy about it. Anyways, okay. I do want to really get to one photo. So I'm kind of at the last batch of the JMT hikes. Let me filter again by my green color coding. It was attribute. Okay. And then let's look at, okay, so this is kind of when I was starting to enter Yosemite. So I'm reaching the end of the hike and I have some photos here. So here we are. This is kind of by Mammoth entering Yosemite. This peak is very prominent. I think it's Mount Robson. Don't quote me on that. I think it is. This is Thousand Island Lake. I know that for a fact. This is a very popular backpacking destination for 2 or 3 days. You don't necessarily have to like hike the JMT to get to it, but maybe we'll edit this photo. But let's look at some photos. Now, I did say this. I did have the challenge of shooting in daylight. I usually try and wait for sunset to get some color, but by the time I hit the tent, I just was ready to pass out. But I do want to edit something, so let's go here. I usually start out with kind of these global adjustments, right? I do like to bring up the shadows. I'll bring down the highlights. And I look at my histogram here. So without getting too much into it, you want to make sure that you have just kind of this like bell curve of information. These are your darks, your midtones, your highlights, and you know, darks are going to be lower on the level of lightness, midtones you want to bring up. So tons of stuff to do here. But this is kind of something I look like. I make sure I'm not clipping the blacks or the whites, right? And then I'll give it some vibrance because again, this was shot raw, so it does need some color. And then I just like to do a simple S-curve. So simple S-curve just gives contrast to your image in a way that you can really fine tune it and control it. And then one thing that I feel like it's something that I didn't start doing until not that long ago is really messing with different profiles in Lightroom. So I really like the modern ones that they have. So they have, you know, Modern 4, Modern 3, Modern 5. I use Modern 10 a lot. So, you know, this preset isn't going to look the same in each photo. Like the light, the shadows, the contrast, it affects how this preset look. But in general, these modern ones kind of give it that old film look that I really like. And, you know, this one isn't the best example of how much like of a film look this can look. Because again, it's daylight. You know, the colors just don't really pop like if it's a morning or sunrise. But I do like to add these. And then, you know, you can increase the amount to go back to the original or like increase it more. So there we go. I'm increasing it more and you can kind of see that faded look that again, Fuji is just really dialed in. And then I do want to get to masking because that was kind of a thing. So again, I like to add a radial gradient. This is probably the gradient I use the most. You know, and then I like to kind of give it, you know, some natural, there is a vignetting slider, but I just like to be in control because I'm kind of ADD about that. And then I'm just kind of centering the photo so that the attention is really going towards that peak. So maybe I'll center it a little more there, right? And then I'll just bring the exposure down, okay? And then I always like to duplicate and invert that, right? And maybe give it more feathering so you don't have such a noticeable edge of me increasing it. And then I'll increase the shadows, maybe the exposure there, just a little bit to kind of make that pop. And I don't like it affecting, I don't like this like brightness affecting the sky because to me that looks unnatural. So I do like to subtract that radial gradient with a select sky. So again, kind of hard to tell here, but you know, if I really zoom in, well, you can't see it, but if I zoom in here, it's just, oh, well, there's the overlay. So it's affecting everything but the sky because, you know, you don't want your edits to be too noticeable where it's distracting. So that way I know I'm just targeting the sky, right? And then from there, you know, I might do some linear gradients. and kind of like grab these edges and bring them down a little. Because again, the emphasis is really just kind of the centerpiece. And something I should have done at the beginning is honestly just crop this. So, you know, I might even give it a different aspect ratio. I might go more like 4:5 just to kind of get the edges out. Because again, this is the emphasis for me. So I'll just make it more like this and kind of try and center that peak, right? And then I know it looks a little tilted, so we'll see if auto can kind of match it up. Nope, it didn't want to. But, you know, I try and kind of line it up at the water level. There we go. So that looks good. That looks good to me, right? And then from there, you know, it's choose your own adventure. So I like to bring this part up just to kind of, again, go more of that faded look. You know, you can see I'm just kind of crushing the blacks here. And we'll do a quick before and after. That's before, that's after. You know, again, kind of going for that faded, more creative look, just because, again, this is, you know, I'm shooting in broad daylight, and, you know, you could argue it's challenging to really make photos stand out when you just have the sun overhead. But, you know, that's why I really like to lean on like different presets. You know, even these FT presets, I like to do this. Okay, so I like this. This is kind of more like really making it vibrant and changing the colors, where I think it's really giving it more of a personality, the photo, you know. So, you know, again, before, after, right? And then from there, I would probably still make my adjustments here. The sky is a little too saturated for me. So I would go to the HSL, and I would go to saturation, click this little guy, go to the sky, and then just kind of scroll down. And I'm just taking down the saturation on the sky. So not too much attention's going there. Again, you can always see before, after, cool. Wow, speed edit. Okay, cool. We need to bounce because we have another show coming up. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us for the inaugural episode of Photo Talk. This was really fun for me. I'm passionate about photography. I love it. Please feel free to comment what you would like to see. You know, again, this is new. Choose your own adventure. And if you want to talk about camera trends, spend more time nerding out, photo submissions, we can do all that. But thank you so much for joining me. I do need to sign off because I'm going to cut off. And we'll see you all in about 2 weeks for this. All right. Thanks, everybody. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.